The new Block III Super Hornet promises to be as significant a jump in capability as the earlier transition from the Block I Hornet to Block II Super Hornet in the early 2000s. Here's what you need to know. In all, the U.S. Navy intends to purchase some 78 all-new Block III Super Hornets, while also upgrading its existing fleet of 550 or so jets to match. The U.S. Navy began taking delivery on the first Block III F-15EX Super Hornets for testing last year, and while the jet may look strikingly similar to its predecessor on the outside, a peek inside the cockpit shows just how much this fighter has changed. The new Block III Super Hornet promises to be as significant a jump in capability as the earlier transition from the Block I Hornet to Block II Super Hornet in the early 2000s. As a result, the new F-15EX Super Hornet, called the Super Duper Hornet by some, will join the Air Force's new F-15EX Eagle II in serving as among the world's most advanced non-stealth fighters in operation today. In all, the U.S. Navy intends to purchase some 78 all-new Block III Super Hornets, while also upgrading its existing fleet of 550 or so jets to match. From Hornet to Super Hornet. Originally designed and built by McDonnell Douglas, the first F-15 Hornet took to the skies in 1978 and made its way into service as the U.S. Navy's go-to carrier fighter in 1984. The Hornet design was intended to serve as a replacement for a variety of carrier aircraft, including the A-4 Skyhawk and F-4 Phantom IIs, while complementing the dogfighting dynamo of the era, the famed F-14 Tomcat. The Hornet's broad capability set and impressive performance made it a standout platform for both the Navy and Marine Corps, thanks in no small part to its multi-role focus. Indeed, its FA prefix is indicative of this multi-role skill set, with F standing for fighter and A standing for attack. By 1992, the U.S. Navy was ready to double down on the Hornet, but in order to keep up with the changing times, the aircraft needed a significant facelift. In truth, this new Super Hornet was a largely new aircraft that simply carried over the FA-18 designation, in part, to convince Congress that the program was a cost-effective derivative effort, rather than a pricey clean sheet design. The change from Hornet to Super Hornet, which are also known as the Block I and Block II orders of this aircraft, was dramatic. The Block II Super Hornet, sometimes called the Rhino by pilots, is larger than its predecessor and has some standout design cues that you may not notice at first pass, but become hard to ignore once you're familiar with these two fighters. Those changes granted the Super Hornet 33% more internal fuel storage and 15,000 more pounds in maximum weight, allowing for a 41% increase in operational range. The changes inside the cockpit were dramatic too. The old physical keyboard was swapped out in favor of a touchscreen display, as well as the addition of an engine fuel display, EFD, and reference standby display, RSD. Those displays and others throughout the cockpit also went to full color, instead of the previous monochrome. Other avionics tucked inside the fuselage were upgraded, including onboard radar. The Super Hornet was equipped with a APG-79 radar system that could keep track of more enemy aircraft and spot them from much further distances. In order to support this improved air-to-air capability, additional weapons stations for weapons like the AIM-120 were added, alongside improved radar warning receivers, a ALQ-214 jammer, and more chaff and flares than the Hornet could manage. The Legacy Hornet was still a capable fighter, however, and Marine Hornets remained aboard America's flat tops all the way until February of this year. The Block III Hornet is flying straight into the 21st century. Last June, the U.S. Navy accepted delivery of its first two Block III Super Hornets for testing, a single-seat E model and a two-seat F model. Both iterations of the new fighter have undergone significant upgrades and design changes over the Block II version of the jet, broken up into 5 major design features. Cockpit. The Super Hornet cockpit has undergone a serious overhaul for Block III, incorporating a single touchscreen design in place of a litany of gauges and readouts. The Advanced Cockpit System, ACS, takes the legacy displays of the Block II and puts them all into one big touchscreen piece of glass that's almost like an iPad interface for the pilot, Jennifer Tebow, Boeing Director of Development for FA-18 and EA-18G programs, explained. The intent behind the streamlining of these screens isn't to reduce the data available to pilots, but rather, to help manage it more effectively. Fighter pilots have to glean information from multiple screens and the world around them and then fuse it all together in their heads to develop a well-rounded concept of the battle space they're in. While flying supercomputers like the F-35 makes this process even easier for pilots, the Block III Super Hornet promises to bridge the gap between fourth-generation jets like the Super Hornet and computing powerhouses like the F-35. It's customizable and expandable, and you can set it to how you want your displays to show up every time you jump in the cockpit. I'm left-handed, so I like my keypad on the left side with fuel and engine information on the right, an unnamed Navy test pilot told Forbes last year. Conformal fuel tanks. One of the most pressing issues facing the U.S. Navy in the 21st century is the lack of fuel range in its carrier-based fighters. Neither the existing Block II Super Hornet nor the advanced F-35C Joint Strike Fighter have the range they'd need to engage Chinese targets without placing their carriers in direct range of China's hypersonic anti-ship missiles. As such, a slew of efforts are underway to pull more range out of these aircraft, including the development of the MQ-25 Stingray refueling drone for use on America's flat tops. But in order to address this problem on the aircraft itself, the Block III Super Hornet includes the addition of conformal fuel tanks that add 3,500 pounds of fuel. These additional tanks are called conformal because they hug the fuselage of the fighter, limiting added drag. While this won't be enough to offset the capability gap created by China's anti-ship missiles, it is an important step in the right direction. Earlier this year, Aviation Week reported that technical, structural, and sustainment issues had risen the anticipated cost of incorporating these conformal fuel tanks, placing their future in jeopardy. However, with the Navy concerned about the range of its existing fighters, it stands to reason that the service will find a way to work out these issues. Networking capabilities. The Block III Super Hornet is leaning into the future of data with its Distributed Targeting Processor Networked, DTPN, mission computer and its Tactical Targeting Network Technology, TTNT, data link. The DTPN is 17 times more powerful than the existing mission computer aboard the Super Hornet, but more importantly, utilizes an open architecture that will allow for software to be changed or updated without having to actually replace any of the aircraft's hardware.